Hello, I am Baal Kadmon, and I'd like to thank you for watching and or listening to this podcast. Merry New Year! If you haven't seen the movie, you won't get that. So, I hope you had a good holiday season. I'm happy to see this new year, even though in the end every day is the same day, right? It doesn't really matter one day to the next, but there's something psychologically satisfying about a new year, because there's something that's it's a mental reset, even if it's an illusion. And sometimes illusions can be beneficial. So anyway, I wanted to give you a little bit of an update on what is coming for the new year. And I want to also read you a chapter of a new text I just released. So if you've been around my social media for a while or on my mailing list, you've known I've discussed something called a project that I was working on called Hebrew for the Occultists, or Hebrew for Occultists, right? And I promised this in 2016 or 2017. So that was a long time ago, or at least it feels that way. So anyway, I am happy to announce that that course is going to be out in a few weeks. I finally got to it, but it's not going to be called Hebrew for the Occultist. I changed it up a little bit. It is now called The Magician's Alphabet, Understanding Hebrew for the Magical Arts. And I think it's a much better title. And in that program, I go deep. I mean, I go through the obvious sort of grammatical stuff and all that. And it's mostly from the biblical Hebrew standpoint, because a lot of that is what is used in the occult, and there's some also Mishnaic Hebrew too. So we're going to do some reading, obviously from the Bible. We're going to read the texts in the Talisman of Solomon. We're going to read some Kabbalistic texts, even the ones that are in Aramaic, because some of them are using Hebrew letters. If you want to be notified when that program is out, please go to occultcourses.com/Hebrew, and you can join my mailing list. If you're already on my mailing list, you don't have to do that. You will get an announcement, but if you're not, go to that page, sign yourself up, and you'll find out when that course is available. So anyway, I want to read you a chapter from my latest text, Solomon's Secret, Unraveling the Mystery of the Shamir. And some of you may or may not know what the Shamir is, but it's actually a worm. Or at least some of the rabbis said it was a worm. And this worm actually helped King Solomon build the temple, according to legend. Yes, literally a worm. It had a very unique job. So I'm going to read you one of the chapters from this text. It is available right now on Amazon. The link is in the description. I hope you enjoy it. The Rabbinic Shamir. In the Jewish text called the Mishnah, there's a fascinating detail about the creation of 10 extraordinary and mystical items by God. This event is said to have happened just before the onset of the first Sabbath, marking the completion of creation. Among these remarkable creations were Moses' staff, known for its miraculous powers, the sacred tablets of the law, and this enigmatic Shamir. It states in Pirkei Avot 5:6, 10 things were created on the eve of the Sabbath at twilight, and these are they: the mouth of the earth, the mouth of the well, the mouth of the donkey, the rainbow, the manna, the staff of Moses, the Shamir, the letters, the writing, and the tablets. And some say also the demons, the grave of Moses, and the ram of Abraham our father. And some say, and also tongues, made with tongues. Now I have to think that if the Shamir is listed here, it means that it is a very important object, and could not just be merely a thorny shrub as was described in the Bible in a previous chapter. Everything on that list is a major creation. Yes, even the mouth of a donkey. I know that sounds funny, but it is significant, at least as far as I'm concerned. In Jewish tradition, the mouth of the donkey is associated with a specific event in the Hebrew Bible. The story of Bilam's or Balaam's donkey, in Hebrew it's Bilam. According to the book of Numbers, chapter 22, verses 21 through 35, Bilam was a non-Israelite prophet who was summoned by King Balak to curse the Israelites. On his journey to meet Balak, Bilam's donkey saw an angel of God blocking their path and refused to move forward. Bilam, unable to see the angel, became angry and struck the donkey several times. Eventually, God opened the mouth of the donkey and it spoke to Bilam, revealing the presence of the angel. This event demonstrated the idea that even the most ordinary and seemingly mute creatures can be used by God to convey messages and perform miracles. But that's just an aside. In essence, clearly the Shamir was exceedingly important. Now, despite its importance, it is not clear how it got its name. An obscure commentary called Tosafot Yom Tov on Pirkei Avot by Rabbi Yom Tov Lipman Heller, 1579 to 1654, states something very interesting. He says, "The Shamir is a worm-like creature that comes from the utterance, 'Let the waters swarm,' etc." The verse in which it states, "Let the waters swarm," is Genesis chapter 1, verse 20. The full verse is, "And God said, 'Let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures, and let fowl fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven.'" Now, I read the Hebrew of this verse, and on the surface, I couldn't really ascertain how Rabbi Lipman Heller ascertained that the name Shamir came from that verse. But after about a minute or two of looking it over, I could see exactly what he might be referring to. The Hebrew is Vayomer Elohim Ishretzu Hamayim Sheretz Nefesh Chaya. Now, I found two possible ways the Shamir could be hidden in this text. In audio, it is very difficult to ascertain this, but in text, it's very easy to see. We see in the word Ishretzu, we have the Shin. Hamayim, we have the Mem and the Yud. And Sheretz, we have the Reish. And that spells Shamir. But then I also saw Shamir in reverse, using those same words. So if you see Sheretz, the Shin, and now we're going in reverse, now we're going from left to right. Hebrew is right to left. We have Shin, Mem Sofit, Yud, and Reish. Again, spells Shamir. Now the second instance might garner questions of accuracy, but it is valid. Let me explain. In the first one, we see the Shin, Mem, Yud, and Reish from right to left. In the second one, we see this as well, but the Mem is in its final form, known as Mem Sofit. Usually, you would not see this form of Mem in the middle of a word. However, when using gematria, Kabbalistic letter permutations, and equidistant letter studies, the final forms of letters are often used the same way as the regular forms of those same letters. In addition, you can also read Hebrew in reverse when using gematria, Kabbalistic letter permutations, and equidistant letter studies, and the like. So in both cases, we see the word Shamir both in proper form from right to left, and again from left to right, but with the final form Mem in the middle of the word. The fact that both renditions are within the same three words leads me to believe that this is what Rabbi Lipman Heller was referring to. I could be wrong, but I don't know. It seems clear to me. Moving on. We learn more about the significance of the Shamir in the Talmud, Gittin 68a. It states, "There is a creature called a Shamir that can cut the stones, which Moses brought and used to cut the stones of the ephod. The ephod is part of the priestly breastplate. This breastplate, adorned with the names of the tribes of Israel, was engraved using the Shamir, as it states above." Rabbeinu Bachya, a scholar known for his exceptional commentary on the Old Testament, goes deeper into this. He states in Shmot 25:7, "This was the reason Moses had to use the Shamir worm in order to achieve the engravings by chemical means, through secretions of that worm applied minutely. What did Moses do? He first wrote the letters with ink and then exposed them to the Shamir worm. When thus exposed at some distance, the stones cracked in the required places so that the names appeared as if they had been engraved on the respective stones." That's pretty amazing. This insight underscores the Shamir's pivotal role in the creation of some of the most sacred objects in biblical history, and that it does its task through chemical means. However, there is another interesting fact about the Shamir's care that adds a twist as to how it may have done its job. I will get to that shortly. But the tradition doesn't end there. If we back it up a bit, we find that the Shamir was also a major participant in other stories. You may recall the story of Abraham and Isaac. In that story, Abraham was to sacrifice his son Isaac to the Lord. In order to do that, he had to build an altar. The text states, Genesis chapter 22, verse 9, "When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built the altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar on top of the wood." On the surface, this doesn't seem like much, but when we look at what the Talmud says of this event, we see this. Pesachim 54a, 7. "Even the ram slaughtered by Abraham in place of Isaac, and the Shamir worm used to shape the stones of the altar were created at that time." This verse is part of a broader one that describes those 10 things created on the eve of the first Shabbat we discussed earlier. Notice that it states that the altar Abraham used was made possible with the assistance of the quote-unquote Shamir worm. Clearly, this worm can carve stone. In that vein, we see in another Talmud tractate that not only is it strong, but we also learn of its size and how to store it. Sotah 48b, 12, it states, "The sages taught, this Shamir, its size is that of a barley corn, and was created in the 6 days of creation, and nothing hard can withstand it. In what it is kept, so that it will not break everything in the vicinity. They wrap it in tufts of wool and place it in a leaden vessel, full of barley bran, which is soft and will not be broken by the Shamir." Interesting, right? This is such an elusive creature. We see similar understandings of the Shamir from a commentary of the Talmudic text of Pirkei Avot, which we saw earlier. This commentator was Rabbi Ovadia of Bartenura, 1445 to 1515. He states, "And the Shamir, it's like a type of worm the size of a grain of barley in its entirety. When they would place it on the stones that were marked with ink to demark what they wanted to cut, the stones would become indented on their own." Here we see that this worm is also smart enough to see where people make markings and will cut along those lines. Now, if you look at one of those verses again, it states, "They wrap it in tufts of wool and place it in a leaden vessel." This is an interesting passage. Why lead? What is lead usually used for in the medical field? To block certain kinds of radiation. Is it possible the Shamir was using some kind of radiation to do its job? Now, look, I am no expert in the various forms of radiation, and I'm not even sure if the kind of radiation lead protects from can be honed to cut stone. But I do find it interesting that from all the metals, lead is used to contain the Shamir's laser-like gaze. It's all very interesting. So now that we have an idea about this Shamir worm and its importance, we will now start to discuss the role that it is most known for, mainly King Solomon's use of it. As you probably know, King Solomon is no stranger to magic and magical objects. In the next few chapters, we will jump back into the history of things. This time we will discuss the first temple and Solomon's involvement with it. I will also assess Solomon himself. I do all this to lay the groundwork for our future discussion on the Shamir and how it helped Solomon build the temple. We will first discuss why the temple is so important to the Jewish faith to begin with, and by extension the occult. There you have it, my friends, a chapter from my latest book, Solomon's Secret. It is available now on Amazon. You can see the link below. There will be an audiobook to this one, and that actually the chapter that you heard is going to be from that audiobook. I do hope you enjoy it. And again, if you're also interested in the Hebrew course, please go to occultcourses.com/Hebrew. Add yourself to the mailing list if you are not already there, and you'll be notified when it is available. And I'm also working on many, many other things I think you'll really, really enjoy this year. Anyway, I hope you're well, and I will speak to you soon. So mote it be.